Well, good morning. Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning?
Great.
Well, nice to see you
How are
all.
you?
I am well too. My name is Ed Laine. If we have not met, I am a broker here in Seattle. And today we are going to talk scripts and scripting. So let me unplug my second monitor so it doesn't play games with me. And let's dive in, shall we? So, a little bit about me, if you're not familiar with me, I'm a team leader and managing broker up here in Washington. Own my own firm for almost 20 years, but I've sold close to 3,000 homes over 37 years. So I've got a ton of experience. I've tested and tried a lot of dialogues and scripts that have failed miserably, and I've also tested and perfected others. So my intent is to only share the good ones with you guys, but we are going to be doing this every Thursday. So if you're interested in expanding your library of dialogues, you're welcome to join us. I'm just going to kind of walk you guys through the format of what we're going to be doing. It's just a quick half hour every Thursday, but my goal is going to be to communicate scripts and dialogues for kind of every circumstance, whether it's talking to buyers, sellers, investors, luxury, what to say at open houses, what to say during inspections, what to say when you need a price reduction, what to say when you're trying to convince your seller to price reasonably, what to say to agents that call and say, hey, you got any offers? Every possible scenario we will be kicking around in this class. And each week, my goal is going to be to cover one or two scripts because we only have a half hour, right? So I'll either cover a couple versions of one script or we'll do a couple scripts. And then at the end, I'm going to keep it open for like the last 10 minutes to do Q&A. So I want you, if you come to this regularly, feel free to come with, hey, Ed, what would you say if? And I'll be happy to tell you what script I would use. So we can do some improv, right? That's going to be kind of the format for this going forward. And I'm going to do it every Thursday. So feel free to drop in. The other cool thing about the Agent Collective is this is all being recorded and indexed, and it's saved on theagentcollective.com. So if you miss one, or if you want to go back and revisit one, you can do that. So if you're with EXP, you have access to that information already. If you're not, you can still get access to it by asking an EXP broker for it or talking to us about joining the Agent Collective. So anyway, that's going to be the format. And I just want to give a quick intro. Today, we are actually going to talk about buyers, working with buyers. So the reason I chose this topic for today is because, as you guys probably know, the Fed is meeting next week. And if you study interest rates like I do, I actually was a loan officer for over 25 years. So I'm pretty knowledgeable about this stuff. The interest rate market is already trending downward. Well, buyers have been using rates and the election to a lesser degree as an excuse not to buy. And that's going to change when they talk to their lender today and find out they can get 5.5. Are you guys aware that that rate is available today? So that's why we want to focus on buyers. And we're just going to kind of walk through our buyer presentation and what we say to buyers in order to get them to sign a buyer brokerage services agreement. Because no matter what state you're in with the NAR settlement, you have to have that, right? You're not supposed to deliver any brokerage services until you've been hired. This is how you get hired. So I'm just going to walk you through the scripts we use for that purpose. I'll show you some of the forms and paperwork we use. The only thing you would have to do if you're in another state is replace the buyer broker agreement with yours. So first things first, when I meet with a buyer, my number one goal is to bond and build rapport. And the best way to do that is to ask a lot of questions, right? People work with people they know, like, and trust. So the more I ask you, let's pretend you're my prospect, the more I ask you about you, the more inclined you're going to be to like me, right? And so I can build trust just through a conversation. And what's the best conversation in this context? Well, it's what's your criteria? What do you want in a home, right? So we use this form that you can see on the screen right here. I call it our requirements and nice to haves. And when I'm talking to somebody, I have an inquisitive mind. So I'm going to ask you not just how many beds and baths, but how many kids and how old are they and what grade of school are they in? Or if you say you want a fence, oh, do you have a dog? What breed? Oh, I love that breed, right? The more I can draw out of you, the more you're going to be fond of me. So by the time I'm done chatting with you, I will have the whole front of this sheet filled out, and I'll have most of the back filled out because I've asked you so many questions that aren't really related to the house, right? It's more, oh, you mentioned something about the house, and that made me curious about your family. And so I'll ask questions, right? Do I run into people that are more private and secretive? Sure, that's fine. I'll just not do that as much, right? But I'm always going to try and be engaging and try and draw as much information out of you as I can, because that increases the likelihood that you're going to be bonded to me. Does that make sense? All right. The next thing we do is we explain the law of agency. And the way we do it is kind of do it like a question. Hey, did you know there's actually two types of agency? And you'd be surprised how many buyers are like, no, I didn't know that. I just knew there was real estate agents. Isn't that just one? Well, no, actually there's buyer agency and seller agency, right? And we use stories to draw an image in their mind of what they're facing, right? So you can see here on the screen, I say, I want you to think of the listing broker sign as a stake in the ground, and that they're there to protect the seller. And they have a legal obligation, right? We all know what a fiduciary duty is, but a consumer doesn't. So I use the words legal obligation to do that, to protect the seller. On the other hand, I am a buyer's broker, and my legal obligation is to protect you. And here's the kicker, right? So knowing that, do you want your own professional representation, or do you want to go it alone? And I literally drop my voice an octave, and I say it with almost a creepy tone, right? Because I want the consumer to have this image painted in their mind of vultures circling overhead and dead carcasses on the ground out in the middle of the desert, right? Do you really want to go it alone? And then the consumer will go, well, gosh, not really, right? And then I reach my hand across the table and I go, I'm excited to be working with you. It's that easy, right? Now, how do you get them to sign? That might not be as easy. So the first thing you want to do is, this is the actual slide. So this is the slide that we have that dialogue with, right? So when this is up on the screen, I go, did you know there's two types of agency? And they'll say yes, no, or I'm not sure. And I'll say, well, there's seller agency, where the seller has a legal obligation. And what they're seeing on the screen is the word fiduciary, right? So what have I done right there? I've educated them. They're seeing the word fiduciary, they're hearing me say legal obligation, and they're putting those together going, oh, I learned something new today, right? Then there's buyer agency. And then I go through the vultures circling overhead dialogue. Does that make sense? Then we move to the folder. So in our process, it's requirements and nice to haves, move to the laptop and the slide deck and show them and talk about the law of agency, and then close the laptop and move to the folder. And at the end of all this, I'm going to give you a way to get our folder, and you can use it, plagiarize it, do whatever you want with it. Just replace the agency agreement with your own state agency agreement, right? So when I go to the folder, the top piece of paper in the folder is the cancellation agreement. And the reason I do that is that's the easiest thing to get somebody to sign, right? Think about it. If I said, Diana, I want you to sign this, and what this says is that you can fire me at any time. Would you have any reservation in signing it? Like that's all it says is that you can fire me. You haven't even hired me yet. So you're going to be more likely to go, oh, yeah, okay, I'll sign that. So what I do is I have a pen in my hand and I initial it, right? And I'll put it on the screen so you can see what it looks like. So I initial it right here, and then I slide it across the table and I hand you the pen. What have I now done? I got the pen in your hand. That's another win for me in my effort, and my goal towards getting you to sign. Getting the pen in your hand is a win, right? So I say, this allows you to fire me at any time, but please don't fire me. This is how I feed my kids, is what I say. If you don't have kids, you can say, please don't fire me. Alex is on the call. He could say, this is how I feed my dogs, right? Or this is how I make my living is another one you could use, right? So, but you do it with a giggle, right? You can see over here, this is how I fill in the blank, and you say it lightheartedly and with a giggle, they'll be more inclined to say yes. And then when they see you initial here and then slide it over, then they sign. And you go, great. The next thing I want to show you, we call it our VIP buyer addendum. I personally call it our 12 promises. These are our service commitments. Think about that. In all your travels as a realtor, how many companies have you been with where a firm makes service level commitments to their buyers in writing? Doesn't really happen, right? They may talk about, hey, I'm going to do this, that, and the other, but to put it in writing and make it a contract, it doesn't happen. But we do, right? Because we want to show them we are not only going to do it, but it also sets me up when I get to the buyer brokerage agreement to be able to say, this is the agreement that holds me accountable to those 12 promises. Does that make sense? Think about that just for a second, right? Most buyer agents do not or did not. Now they have to make a switch, right? But for decades, buyer brokers never used a buyer agency agreement. And the reason why was because they felt like I didn't want to have to handcuff a buyer to me. I didn't feel right to force them to work. No. This is handcuffing me to you or to them. This is holding me accountable, right? Plus, I gave you the cancellation agreement at the beginning, so you can fire me at any time, but please don't fire me. Ha ha ha, right? So I've taken the dynamic of buyer brokerage and I've just turned it around. Instead of buyers being handcuffed to the agent's being handcuffed to the buyer, which all of you on this screen would love to be handcuffed to a buyer, wouldn't you? Right? And by the way, just as a side note, in our state, our agreement is unilaterally cancelable. So that means you could fire them and they could fire you at any time anyway. That cancellation agreement is really just for pageantry to make it really stark and in their face that they can fire me at any time. But the agreement allows them to do that anyway. Isn't that funny? Or am I the only one that thinks that's funny? All right, I'll keep going. All right, so here's what the 12 promises document looks like. And we just rattled through it. Like I'm holding it on the table upside down when I'm looking at it, but so they can read it, right? And I just run down the list and I paraphrase the 12 promises. And I say, we'll help you find the best financing. That's number one. Provide you with regular updates from our VIP buyer profiling service. We have, in our marketing, we talk about our VIP buyer profiling service because we have an off-market system. So what we're saying in number two is we're going to give you updates from the off-market system of any properties that meet your criteria you're going to know about, right? Arrange for private showings of any property. When you find the property you like, we'll discuss the best strategy. We'll help you prepare an offer with terms, provisions, and addenda weighted in your best interest. We'll present the offer in your behalf and negotiate in your favor. Recommend extremely competent affiliates, whether it's inspectors, appraisers, title, escrow, whatever you need. We'll make sure to give you referrals to the best, right? We vetted all the people we refer. I will be available to answer questions at any time, right? And then what I usually say at the end of this one is, and you tell me what's your favorite medium, right? Because if you prefer text, I'm good with that. If you prefer LinkedIn, instant message, it doesn't matter. Whatever your preferred is, that's what I'm going to do, because that's going to make it easier for me to communicate with you, right? So I'll find that out when I get to that point. Then I talk about the 3 bonuses. And I like to use stories to sell points, right? So bonus number 1 is I'm going to give you a 1-year home warranty. The story I use is, have you ever bought a blender and got it home and it didn't work? If that happened, what would you do? And they go, well, I'd take it back. Right. What if you bought a house and a day after closing, the water heater failed? What would you do? And they'll go, take it back with a smile, right? And you're like, yeah, if only that was possible. Unfortunately, we don't have that luxury, right? Because once you own it, it's yours. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take steps to make sure it's the perfect house for you before you buy it. And then I'm going to give you a warranty to make sure that it stays the perfect house for you after you bought it. And then I just buy them for the first year. And I'll tell you guys another little side trick. If you tell your buyers, and I do this with buyers and sellers, but if you tell all your clients that I'm going to provide you with a warranty on every deal, that warranty can come into play during the inspection negotiations, right? You can go to your client when they get the list of items that are, in need of repair, and you can say, well, here's a great example. How many of you have gotten an inspection and you saw the inspector's note said the warrant or the hot water heater is beyond its useful life, right? But the seller is going to say, who cares? It works fine, right? So getting a seller to replace a water heater that works fine, it's not easy. I just replaced my water heater in my own home. 25 years it lasted. It wasn't even leaking when I replaced it. I just knew I was on borrowed time because water heaters only last 8 to 10 years. And that's when an inspector is going to make that notation, right? If it's 8 years or older, they're going to say it's beyond its useful life. So a warranty helps me make my client feel better about the fact that the seller's not going to replace it. That's all I'm saying. And so if you're not doing that in your business, you should probably consider it. And by the way, if you're with EXP, they have a partnership with America's Preferred Home Warranty where they give me $75 back every time I sell a warranty. So that's story number 1. Story number 2, we offer our clients the perfect purchase satisfaction guarantee. What does that mean? That means I'll sell your house for free if your house is no longer perfect after you bought it. So I'm selling this as a benefit, and here's the dialogue that I use. I go, hey, Suma, let's pretend you bought the perfect house and it was ideal. And then a month after closing, a rock band moves in and they play loud music at 3 a.m. It's no longer perfect anymore, right? What this program does for you is it allows you to move, and I will sell your current home for free and help you buy another one. And they go, I've never even heard of that. Nobody does that. That's right. You guys want to know what? I've yet to actually have to deliver on that guarantee. I've yet to have a rock band move in next door, right? But it's an added benefit. So when I make these 12 promises, they're like, holy crap, every promise is separating me more and more from my competition, right? Because they're not doing it in writing. They're certainly not making these types of commitments, right? And then bonus number 3 is the cancellation guarantee, right? So you already knew about that one. And I just remind you, again, you can fire me at any time. Does that make sense? I say, does that sound fair? And does that make sense? A lot. Because consumers don't want to be unfair. And if it's just a more advanced term that I want to make sure you understand, I say, does that make sense? And they don't want to sound stupid, right? So they go, oh yeah, no, I do. Or if they don't, they'll tell me. They'll go, not really. Let me explain it another way, right? And then down at the bottom, this is where we explain our fee. So you should charge whatever you charge. I charge 4% plus $5.95. And then I tell them, I'm going to attempt to get the seller to pay that, some or all of it. And whatever I'm able to get from the seller will be fine. And now in Washington State, we had a new law that went into effect in January that literally in the law, it says the fee on the buyer brokerage services agreement cannot be cannot be lower than what the agent gets paid. So we want to err on the high side anyway, right? So I'm working on weaving that into my dialogue because I'll be able to say, we set it at this level because the law doesn't allow me to write it at a lower number, but accept a higher number. So we can always go lower. We just can't go higher. That makes sense, right? And then I would say those words to the consumer, right? These 12 promises is what allows me to frame the buyer agency agreement as the agreement that holds me accountable to those 12 promises, right? And you never, ever want to say the word contract. Contracts are scary to people, right? So now this is the agreement that holds me accountable to those 12 promises. Let me draw your attention to a couple of things, and then I'll give you a chance to review it. And if everything looks okay, I will ask you to sign it. So I'm telling you ahead of time my expectation, right? Then I pull out, we call it Form 41, and I circle with my pen. I just want to draw your attention to a couple things. The first one is we write this for a year. It could be 10 years. It doesn't really matter because you can cancel it at any time. But what I want to avoid is the risk of this thing expiring while we're, trying to hurry up and write an offer before it expires. We remove that completely because based on the criteria you shared with me, it's not going to take us a year to find it anywhere. Does that make sense? And they go, oh yeah, okay. And then the second thing I'll show you is this is where it shows my fee. And then I slide it across to them and I give them the opportunity to review it. And I say, I'm just going to start looking at my calendar to see when is a good time that we can go out and look at houses. And I just start looking at my phone because I don't want them to think I'm, hawking over them and staring at them while they're reading it. People fall in one of three categories at this point. The people that just at this point trust you, immensely, and they just sign it, don't even read it. There's people that pretend to read it and then sign it. And then there's people that had no intention of signing it in the first place, right? Those are the people that are going to give you objections. They're the people that are going to say, well, my wife's not here. I don't sign anything unless I'm with my wife or my husband, right? Well, if I get that objection, that's on me. Because when I book appointments, I book the appointment and then I ask qualifying questions. Are you buying this home by yourself or with someone else? Oh, with someone else. Great. Are they able to join us Saturday at 2:00? Well, no, she works. Okay, well, let's move it. Because I want to make sure when I take down your criteria that I'm also getting hers so that I can do a great job for you. And I'll unbook the appointment and try and meet with both, right? But it can happen. I can book it for both and then only one shows up. And now I know I've got probably going to have that conversation at the end. But I'm going to handle objections. I'm going to remind them that it's cancelable and I'm going to encourage them to sign it. That's it. And then you have to make a business decision. If they refuse to sign, In Washington State, it's actually illegal for me to deliver brokerage services without them signing. So we now have an extra layer. Those of you on the call that are from Washington, you have an extra objection handler, right? Because you can say, well, I understand your hesitation, but here's the thing. This Senate Bill 5191, and I cite the name of the bill because it increases my credibility in the eyes of the consumer, right? When I say specifically that it's Senate Bill 5191, they're learning that for the first time and they're thinking, oh God, this guy really knows his stuff, right? I go, the thing is, Senate Bill 5191 prohibits any broker from providing you brokerage services without you hiring them. And this is how you hire them. So whether it's me or somebody else, you're going to have to sign one of these forms before you even get to go in a house. So why not hire me, since hopefully I've demonstrated some skill today, but also because I've given you the written ability to fire me at any time. Right? If I don't prove to you in the next day or two that I'm the right person that you wanted to work with, then fire me. And I'll tell you, I've been getting that form signed literally 100% of the time for over 10 years. I mean, I couldn't even begin to tell you the last time I wasn't able to get it signed. And we've only been required to have it since January. But we've been using it in my organization for 17 years. So it's been an old hat habit that we've built and perfected over almost 2 decades. So just practice it, role play it with others, and you will be able to get to 100% as well, right? Especially with that cancellation agreement. That's what unlocks for the consumer, hey, what do you got to lose, right? So our form is a 3-page form. The only other thing worth noting is there's a tail period that we write for 6 months. That means if they buy something after this is expired that you brought to their attention, you're still entitled to the commissions. You can set that for any length you want. And then the only other thing I do is I make the 12 promises an attachment to the agreement. So it's now memorialized as part of the agreement, right? So here's what we do. We have a folder. I'm picking up the pace a little bit so we finish on time. We have a folder that's prefabbed. I have a closet in my office here. I just grab the folder and go. On the left side of the folder is cancellation guarantee, VIP buyer addendum, and the Form 41 broker agreement, plus the perfect purchase guarantee and terms. We have a little thing that says what to say at an open house, a glossary of terms, credit score document, easy guide to home buying, and the law of agency pamphlet. I'm presenting this as a resource to the consumer, right? Now that you've hired me, I'm going to give you this resource. I just want to explain what's in it. And then I walk them through it. And there's a video I'll share at the end here so you can see me go through it. But on the right side of the folder is the requirements and nice to have. So that's the form I pulled out and we filled out together. I have a map of the area for people that are out of area that might not be familiar. And then I have a sample purchase agreement because I want them to know that I'm going to write an offer for them and I'm going to put in the offer parachute points, which are contingencies, right? You and I know what those are, but parachute points is a layman's term that allows you to do due diligence on the house and get out of the house if you want, right? So on theagentcollective.com is a video about the same length as this one where I go through my presentation in more of a role play type of scenario. So if you want to practice this more, I would encourage you to shoot a picture of the screen and go to that page and watch that video. It's actually a series of 5 different brokers like me that all go through their buyer presentation. You can create your own, right? Take bits and pieces that you like and create your own. And then the last thing I'll tell you is if you want the contents of my folder, just shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send you that. And then you can replace the logos and replace the Form 41 buyer brokerage agreement with your own. Did everyone get my email address? I'll put it in the chat in case it's easier. How was that? Did anybody learn anything?
Excellent. Was good. Very nice.
Good? All right. People love the "this is how I feed my kids" life. Right. Good. Thanks much. When you list a property, do you send the disclosures to non-represented buyer? Just curious. Ooh, great question. So here in Washington State, we have been instructed that people can come into your open houses. You don't have to represent them. If a buyer inquires directly to me, you know how a lot of buyers are like, hey, I want to talk straight with the listing broker type thing. In Washington State, dual agency is legal, but I don't ever do it. And I'll tell you guys the reason why. The problem with dual agency, even though it's legal in Washington, and it's legal in some other states, just not all of them, is one of those two people could wake up 2 years from now and go, you know what? I think I got the shaft and I'm going to sue Ed, right? It could just be a whim. And I just don't put myself in that position. So what I will do if they call is I'll say, hey, I'm happy to work with you. I'll write the offer up. I'll even give you professional advice, but I won't tell you anything about the seller's situation that would diminish their leverage. And I won't say anything to the seller about your situation that would diminish your leverage, but we're going to write the contract up as if you're unrepresented. And in our forms, there's literally a checkbox. So it would say buyer is represented by unrepresented, seller is represented by listing broker. And that way on paper, so if this 2-year scenario were to play out on the contract, the judge would see, no, he didn't represent you. So if you felt you got the shaft, that's because you were unrepresented, right? I don't have to worry so much about that because of that policy. Now, I encourage all of you to check with your manager, your local broker, because there's folks from other states on here, to make sure you know the local rules. But with the NAR settlement, that's applying to all of us, right? So it's a good conversation to have. Any other questions? We finished pretty well on time. I like it.
Good.
No. Again, I'm going to do this every Thursday. So we'll cover, if you weren't here at the beginning, I just started by saying we're going to cover everything, whether it's how to get a price reduction or what to say to a buyer who inquires on your listing directly, or what to say to buyers at open houses that you're trying to convert, or how to prep someone for the inspection results, how to get sellers to price reasonably. That's a really big one and you'll love the tool that I'm going to give you for that. So tune in every Thursday. And again, this is all being recorded. So if you miss it, you'll be able to watch it after the fact. Okay?
Thank you.
Great to see you guys. Have an awesome, awesome day. Alex, good to see you, man.
Thanks, Ed. Have a good day.
Thanks, Adini. Take care.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.